It's the federal government versus the nation's oldest university. Harvard University has already lost billions of dollars in grants due to White House and their claims of the Ivy League school failing to protect Jewish students during pro-Palestinian protests. So now Harvard's tax-exempt status is at risk as university leaders refuse to hand the records of international students over to Homeland Security. So it's a stance that could cost them $465 million a year. Let's bring in Queen City News Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes to talk about this. So what is the case the government is actually making against Harvard University?
This is really retaliatory, if anything. This is President Trump attempting to negotiate in the manner that he does, more strong-armed than anything. If you're not going to follow what I'm telling you to do, then I'm going to force you to do it. And this is a typical approach that he's used in a number of times in the business world. And right now, he's done it with other universities. And now Harvard, since Harvard is rejected and said, you know what, thank you for your recommendations, but we're going to decline your recommendations for the things that you want us to do, and we'll move forward with doing it the way that we've been doing it. We've already put in place a number of the policies that we think attempt to address some of the things, but if you're asking us to give you names of students that have participated in protests, we're not going to do that. If you're asking us to remove diversity, equity, inclusion from the things that we do as a university, guess what? We're not going to do that either. And so you can attempt to take our funds. We have an endowment that's bigger than anybody else's. We're fine. But now this newest threat is to remove your tax exempt status. I mean, I think this is the push that is the necessary step for him to try to force their arm, but I just don't think he has the legal backing to do it. The tax status that we've had now, the modern tax status has been since 1913. Harvard has been exempt throughout that whole time. I can't look at any legal precedent that shows where you can go this manner as the President Trump is attempting to do without any court saying, nope, you're not justified in doing it.
I feel like as people are trying to understand what's going on here, I mean, this is such a big talker and a big conversation when people hear about the story, and you look at the case on both sides. So Harvard's saying no. Do you think there's any way at some point they're going to say, all right, you know what, maybe we do need to look at something and change something?
Absolute zero chance. I think they've already said this before. The president said it, that they've made the changes that they are going to make that they believe address the concern, which is the number one original concern, which was ensuring that students are protected on campus from anti-Semitic problems, anti-Semitic behaviors. So that's not saying that people can't say pro-Palestinian statements. That's just saying that they want to ensure that the students that while they're on this campus, that they are being protected from any type of harassment just because they're Jewish. And they're saying that they believe the presidents at these Ivy League institutions have not done enough to protect these students in the past. And you have to look back. This president is only here. This president is now in place because the former president stepped down after congressional inquiry into the things that they were doing on campus. President Gay was there. She withstood the statements during the hearing. She made her point to say, listen, everything that we're doing is what the law requires us to do. And we're even going a step further. During the pushback during that time, she recognized that it was becoming more about her and less about the college. And so then what did she do? She stepped away from the university, saying that it was in the best interest of Harvard that I step away.
And just to give some context there, she was also the first black female president of Harvard.
First black female. And so now what do you have? You have Harvard coming to this situation and saying, you know what, we're not going to be bullied. We're not going to be pushed into a position where we think that we're doing something that goes against our standard. Because the standard for a college and the university is to ensure that all students are welcome. And so this fear that the Trump administration is attempting to do by pushing and provoking these universities, this is the first time where you're saying now we're going to have someone step back and say we're not going to be pushed. I can only look at one example, and this is with that Bob Jones University, where you've attempted to take the tax status from a college and university, and that was rightfully done. In this situation, if we're looking for precedent, that's the only one that I can see any precedent.
And that's closer to home here.
It's extremely close to home. You're talking about right there in South Carolina. But the major difference, and even if the Trump administration uses that, as we can point to the Supreme Court's 8-1 decision in that case, the only difference is the hate and discrimination that was happening at Bob Jones University by having being against interracial marriages. What was happening there was the policy of the university. So for you to be successful here at Harvard, you'd have to say that Harvard University now has somehow adopted this anti-Semitic policy. And that's nowhere on the books. There's nowhere in Harvard's books where they're saying we're anti-Semitic and we're going to stand behind anti-Semitic statements and this is something that has to happen on our campus. That's not happening. This was the policy, and it was clear. And this took them years to get to the Supreme Court before this Bob Jones University thing happened, where the IRS was actually legally authorized to take their tax-exempt status.
All right, so speaking of the IRS, as they follow through, as Harvard does lose, if they do lose their exemption there, what could this mean for all private institutions at this point? And then also, how are they supposed to be able to know what is an approved ideology when you look at what's going on at a private university?
I'd have to go back and say, I don't think it has a chance for them to be removed.
Okay.
If they attempt to do this, first of all, Congress has put in place where they will not allow the IRS to be used as a political weapon. And so Kennedy tried to use it. Nixon tried to use it. And in the 1980s, 1990s, Congress said, okay, we got to put a stop to this. The executive branch can't use the IRS to go after political rivals or folks that just don't agree with their thought process.
Right.
So I think that alone would stop it. But even if the president tried to direct the IRS to remove their tax-exempt status, Harvard files an injunction instantly. It goes to U.S. District Court. U.S. District Court judge, if I'm ballparking playing this out, supports Harvard's approach because of the history behind nothing like this ever happening. U.S. Court of Appeals does the same thing. It goes to the Supreme Court. Even if you have folks that are Trump appointees, they're not ruling against Harvard in this situation because there's absolutely no precedent. I remember 1913, they've been tax exempt that entire time. You have to point to something that shows it. If unlikely it happened, and you know what, they said, Harvard, you're wrong, we're going to remove your tax exempt status. Yes, this would be a devastating blow. This would be a crater-sized blow to college institutions and how they react and respond to the government. But I think that would be extremely far-fetched to see happening. If I'm advising Harvard, I'm saying the chips are in your corner for something like this to play out. Litigation is expensive. You have the money. Let's see them in court.
Khalif Rhodes, we appreciate your insight as always. Thank you.